Have you ever wondered what separates genius from disaster? What invisible thread keeps perfection from unraveling into chaos? In the heart of New York City, under the restless glow of streetlights and the echo of distant sirens, for men believed they had found that line and mastered it. They weren't reckless thieves chasing adrenaline. They were craftsmen of silence, architects of precision, men who spoke the language of risk like poets of the underground. Every step they took was measured, every second rehearsed, every flaw erased. From above, the city looks alive, veins of light pulsing through the night, rain shimmering on asphalt like liquid glass. Down below, in the quiet rhythm of the storm, something else is beating, a plan years in the making. Somewhere between midnight and fate, four figures walk with purpose through the rain. Their boots splash through puddles, but their movements make no sound. Not a word is spoken, only the whisper of breath inside masks and the subtle click of metal beneath gloves. They studied every step, every camera, every second. It was meant to be the perfect crime, but what destroyed everything was just a sound. That's how the story begins. A story about control, about the illusion that humans can outsmart emotion, about how one phone call, a single vibration in the dark, can dismantle months of genius and turn invisibility into exposure. You might think perfection exists, but tonight, you'll see what happens when perfection meets something far more unpredictable, the human heart. The plan was flawless, the timing surgical, the crew four men who'd never failed. Each had a role, each had a reason. Together, they were a ghost team moving through systems like shadows. They didn't crave fame or chaos. They craved completion, the thrill of mastering what others said was impossible. You can almost feel it, the confidence, the quiet arrogance of men who believe nothing can touch them. The city sleeps as they prepare to rewrite its pulse. One works the maintenance shift in a nearby building, feeding them codes and access logs. Another, a former security expert, knows the vulnerabilities of alarms that were built to never fail. Their leader, calm as winter glass, maps every angle, rehearses every breath. For him, perfection isn't ambition, it's religion. And tonight, he believes he's about to touch divinity. Outside, the rain intensifies, blurring reflections into streaks of white and gold. Inside the van, silence reigns. A single clock ticks. 7 minutes, that's all they'll need. 7 minutes to step through the invisible cracks of a system built on fear and money. 7 minutes to disappear without a trace. They don't know it yet, but those same 7 minutes will also define their downfall. There's something poetic about it, isn't there? The line between brilliance and ruin being as fragile as a heartbeat, as delicate as a ringtone in the wrong place at the wrong time. You've seen stories about greed and betrayal, but this one is different. This is about how discipline collapses under emotion, how loyalty becomes hesitation, and how one impulse, a moment of human weakness, can echo louder than any siren. So, stay with me until the end. What you're about to witness isn't just a robbery. It's a dissection of control, a slow-motion unraveling of genius under the weight of a single, ordinary sound. The rain keeps falling, the city keeps breathing, and somewhere in the distance, a phone waits to ring. Because in New York, even silence has a price. And tonight, perfection is about to answer a call it can't ignore. Faint thunder rolls across the skyline. The camera glides down toward the glittering Fifth Avenue storefronts, the glow of diamonds flickering through fog glass. The sound of rain fades into the low hum of electricity. The plan begins. New York lowers its pulse at night, but it never truly sleeps. Along Fifth Avenue, where glass towers shelter money like a delicate secret, there's a place designed not merely to protect wealth, but to intimidate anyone who imagines touching it. By daylight, the jewelry store dazzles with polished marble and a choreography of light dancing over stones that look like frozen lightning. By night, beauty turns to armor. The doors become doctrine. The silence becomes a warning. Everything inside is measured, and everything that can be measured can be controlled. At least, that is what people who build fortresses tell themselves. They watched this place for 3 months. They learned to read it the way a pilot reads the sky, the way a surgeon reads the rhythm of a heart. They mapped the timing of lights, the cadence of nearby crosswalk signals, the brief lull in foot traffic after the last bars close and the first cabs begin hunting dawn. They were not amateurs chasing chance. They were men who treated risk like a language and perfection like a vow. One of them, Elliot, had the simplest disguise, the truth. He was maintenance, the kind of man people stop seeing after a week because he belongs everywhere and nowhere at once. His badge opened doors that expensive suits could not. His clipboard gave him a reason to pause, to look up at ceiling panels, to lean into utility closets, and listen to the way electricity hummed through old conduits. He learned where the building's nerves were exposed, where time had left a seam. He knew which vents carried warm air and which were decoys for heat sensors. He kept those details the way a gambler palms a card. Careful, silent, invisible. Another, Marcus, had once lived on the other side of the glass. He'd written memos about blind spots, argued with managers about coverage, trained guards who later forgot what he bothered to teach them. The store had let him go for reasons they never put in writing, and when they did, they told themselves they were safer without him. But security isn't a camera and a lock. Security is the memory of the person who built the system. Marcus remembered everything. The model numbers stamped under the brackets, the firmware updates that dragged on Sunday nights, the motion sensor in the south corridor that behaved like a nervous animal when the climate control dipped. He remembered, too, how people got lazy when machines did the watching for them. Reyes didn't care about rooms or corridors. He lived in the space between signals. He traced the store's digital heartbeat through stray Wi-Fi bleeds that leaked into the street like soft breath in cold air. He didn't smash firewalls. He slowed them. He adjusted timestamps, nudged packets to arrive just late enough to be ignored by the human eye, but early enough to pacify the machine. He believed that the most beautiful deception is the one that tells a system exactly what it wants to hear. Everything is fine. And at the center of these men was Vance. He didn't use more words than necessary. He measured silence the way others measure time. He treated planning like a devotion. People think the leader of a crew like this must be loud. Vance was the opposite. Calm draws obedience more effectively than noise. He had a rule that felt less like instruction and more like a law of nature. The plan doesn't fight the fortress. It invites the fortress to keep believing in itself. The store's vault sat 2 levels below a field of marble, surrounded by walls that were not merely thick, but layered. Metal over composite, sensors embedded inside like nerves. The lock listened to fingers on the keypad, not to learn identity, but to learn heat and timing. Too slow, and the key plate warmed enough to be suspicious. Too fast, and an algorithm whispered that a tool might be doing the work. The displays upstairs rested on pressure sensors so sensitive they could feel the difference between a diamond setback on velvet and a gloved finger tapping to test if anyone was watching. Redundancy ruled everything. 2 alarms where one would do, 2 backups for those 2 alarms. Arrogance often dresses itself as caution. It tells you that if you add enough locks, you'll never have to worry about the key. They found their key where no one looked, in something old. Behind a maintenance panel on the west side, Elliot discovered an unused junction box left over from a renovation so many years ago that the new blueprints had forgotten it existed. It was neither powerful nor central. It was something better, overlooked. Through that little box, power could be persuaded to blink at just the right moment, like a heartbeat skipping once and then steadying again, calm enough for the body to trust itself. A micro-interruption, too brief to be suspicious, just long enough to make a particular sensor think it had already done its job. They rehearsed the store without stepping inside it. In a rented warehouse with chalk lines for walls, they sketched corridors and measured doorways. They hung dummy cameras and made them stare into overlapping fields the way real ones would. They drew a rectangle on the concrete floor to represent the vault, and they put a heater beside the keypad to teach their hands the rhythm. Press, pause, 7 seconds total. never ate. They timed a sequence until it felt like instinct, until any deviation tasted wrong in the mouth. The goal was not speed alone, but invisibility. Speed without invisibility is just a sprint toward a spotlight. They learned the building's breath. At 2:07 a.m., the HVAC would cycle down, and the thermal profile of the South Hall would flatten enough that a temporary dampening of a sensor could pass without complaint. At 2:19, a delivery truck 3 blocks away always idled for 50 seconds, and in those 50 seconds, the vibrations through the street were enough to nudge a secondary microphone threshold that the monitoring office never prioritized. They learned how long the backup batteries took to report stability after a minor power event, for seconds. In those 4 seconds, a status light flickered green to reassure the system that all was well. In those 4 seconds, a door could open. They mapped the human error too. The night operator in the outsourced security center habitually watched the east camera feed in a quad view while scrolling his phone. The clerk who logged temperature anomalies allowed the software to auto-classify 98% of events as non-critical because the store had been oversensitive during a summer heat wave. The guard who did exterior checks wore a jacket with a loose snap that tapped against the metal railing whenever he leaned to see the street. In the world of alarms, small sounds matter. The human ear filters them out. The human brain, tired and bored, filters even more. Admiration grows for men who study a place like this because they refuse to accept the myth of the impenetrable. Impenetrable is a word sold to owners to justify a price. Systems are not built to be flawless. They're built to be sufficient until someone studies them long enough to find the seam where pride stitched itself into the design. That seam is always there. The only question is whether someone patient enough will sit quietly until it reveals itself. Vance loved the mathematics of timing, but he also understood the psychology of belief. Owners believe that buying the best is the same as building the safest. Managers believe that data equals vigilance. Guards believe that routine equals readiness. The crew believed none of those things. They believed only in the coldness of proof. They sat in a booth across the street, drinking coffee they didn't taste, counting reflections of streetlights in the store's glass to estimate angles. They watched how rain changed the camera glare and how a taxi's headlights could blind a lens just long enough to write note. They learned to read a drip on a window like a clock. They let the store teach them. It taught them that the south entry door receives half a second of electromagnetic interference when a neighboring hotel service elevator engages. It taught them that the internal camera in the appraisal room overexposes for a moment when a fluorescent ballast in the ceiling ages and flickers, a tiny brightness bloom that collapses contrast and weakens facial recognition. It taught them that every Wednesday night, the building's automated lights run a diagnostic that dims the ambient illumination by 5% for 6 minutes, long enough to erase the edge of a shadow on polished stone. A plan grows beautiful when it stops being a collection of moves and becomes a single gesture. What they were building was a gesture, a fluid motion that would slip between sensors like a whisper. 7 minutes to enter, to breathe, to open, to leave. 7 minutes in which nothing would feel unusual to the machines and everything would feel inevitable to the men. Still, none of them confused understanding with ownership. The store remained indifferent. It would not reward their discipline. It would not punish their arrogance. It would simply do what it was built to do, and they would simply do what they had chosen. The only variable with heat and heartbeat was the human element. They pretended they had frozen that too. They pretended that in the right light, even blood could be convinced to move like a diagram. As the weeks advanced, they trimmed the plan of flourishes. Vance removed any step that relied on improvisation. If a step required skill, they practiced it until it required only memory. If a step required luck, they burned it out and replaced it. When Marcus proposed a secondary entrance through a skylight path that would save 15 seconds, Vance cut it after a single test because the acoustic signature of boots on aluminum carried farther than he liked. When Reyes suggested a deeper network diversion to widen their window, Vance declined because widening windows encourages people to relax. The plan was not a field, it was the edge of a blade. Outside admiration is a trap in stories like this, and they knew it. People love competence. They love watching mastery start to breathe. The crew protected themselves from that thrill by refusing to celebrate. No jokes, no handshakes, no language that implied success before it had a right to exist. They ate in silence. They left in silence. And when something went right in rehearsal, Vance simply reset the timer and asked them to do it again. Yet even here, under all the coldness, the human element flickered. Elliot's wife called earlier and later than usual during his maintenance shifts. Marcus still drove past his old workplace and slowed reflexively when he reached the street where he used to park. Reyes kept the phone he'd had before he vanished into a new name, a relic of a person he could remember if the room got too quiet. Vance noticed all of it. He did not comment. He only tightened the plan until there was no room inside it for stray thoughts. The store stood as if it had nothing left to teach, but every night it offered a final lesson. Certainty smells like safety. The crew refused to inhale. They tested the timing of their own footsteps against a metronome. They held their breath while they imagined the keypad's warmth under their fingertips. They learned to hear the difference between a compressor's steady labor and the slight shiver that indicates a cycle change. They learned to step when that shiver would cover sound. In the last week before the attempt, the plan reached a clarity that felt like glass. Entry during the ambient light diagnostic. Power nudge through the forgotten junction box. Not a cut, a blink. A synchronized stagger across sensors that trusted their own refresh rate too much. A vault approach that looked, in numbers, like every other midnight reset the system had ever known. A departure that left no artifact louder than the building's normal noise. 7 minutes from the first breath inside to the last footfall outside. They told themselves a hard truth. A job like this isn't one inside the store. It is one in the months before, in the patient refusal to be impressed by your own intelligence. Perfection fails when admiration begins. The plan was ready because they had not fallen in love with it. They had married it. People will say later that fate found them. People love the idea that a twist waits like a character behind a door. The more honest version is simpler and colder. Complex systems fail for small reasons. A floorboard creaks one night in a way it never did. A resistor ages. A security operator gulps coffee at the precise moment a minor alarm winks and returns. A hand reaches for a phone. Every story looks inevitable once it has happened. Before it happens, it is a field of small choices that look harmless. They stood at the edge of those choices now. Calm, because calm was the only thing permitted. The store waited with the patience of a machine. Confident, because confidence was the only thing it knew. On one side, devotion to order. On the other, devotion to illusion. Between them, 7 minutes that would either validate a religion or expose a weakness older than any lock. You can almost feel the air thin when a plan is ready. Clocks slow down. Doubt has nowhere left to hide. The city's breath steadies. A building becomes a map. A map becomes a path. A path becomes a single step taken without noise. And somewhere, outside the reach of diagrams and timing tables, a phone exists that does not know what a plan is, a phone that belongs to a life that kept moving while 4 men tried to make themselves invisible. It will not ask permission to ring. It will not care about the mathematics of heat or the elegance of a micro-interruption. It would do what phones do when someone who loves you worries that you are late. But for now, the target stands untroubled, sure of its strength, sure that beauty wrapped in technology is the same as invincibility. For now, the admiration belongs to the system. For now, the men keep their promise to silence. The last thing between them and the rehearsal's final breath is the decision to begin. They are ready. The store believes it is ready too. Only one of them can be right for 7 minutes. And as the plan stands on the edge of execution, a quiet thought crosses the line between story and listener. Because every time a plan like this unfolds, it asks more than whether they'll make it out. It asks what you see in them. The precision, the control, the calm before the fall. Maybe you felt that same tension in smaller ways. The moment where one decision, one heartbeat, could change everything. If this story has pulled you into that space, if you can almost feel the rain outside that locked door, take a moment to tell me what it stirred in you. What did you feel while hearing about these men chasing perfection? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all, and it's there that these stories keep living long after the screen fades to black. And if you believe more people should witness how thin the line between brilliance and collapse can be, like this video. It helps this story reach further, helps more people discover that even in silence, human nature always leaves a trace. Your voice, your reaction, your curiosity, these are what keep this channel alive. Every new subscriber is someone joining a circle of listeners who want to see what hides beneath the illusion of perfection. Stay with me. What comes next will take everything we've built so far and start to unmake it, one beat at a time. In the silence of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, time itself feels rehearsed. Dust floats through narrow beams of light, leaking from a cracked roof, and somewhere in that haze, for men build perfection piece by piece. A map of the jewelry store lies stretched across a wooden table, its corners pinned down by metal tools. Lines are drawn with surgical precision. Every camera, every sensor, every exit path rendered in ink and memory. Around them, the air smells of cold metal, engine oil, and intent. A digital timer blinks red against the wall. 7 minutes. Always 7. Each rehearsal begins and ends with that number, like a ritual carved into their minds. When the clock starts, no one speaks. They move as if pulled by invisible strings, synchronized, mechanical, deliberate. Elliot checks the mock control panel, his fingers tracing invisible circuits. Marcus walks the perimeter, counting steps, calculating the rhythm between motion and silence. Reyes monitors a laptop patched to a network of dummy cameras, ensuring the digital illusion matches reality. And Vance, the leader, stands at the center, watching, never interrupting, only marking the seconds with his eyes. Every gesture is accounted for. A hand reaching for a switch must return at the same angle. A step taken on concrete must sound like a breath, not a footfall. They practice how to open the vault without emotion, how to breathe through panic, how to keep the pulse steady when instinct wants to accelerate. Again and again, the same sequence. Enter, disable, retrieve, exit. No ejercitación, no improvisación. The warehouse becomes a stage, and they are dancers in a routine of silence. 7 minutes. Vance finally says, his voice calm but absolute. If we pass that, there's no exit. The phrase falls into the air like a commandment. It isn't fear that holds them. It's respect for the line that separates mastery from ruin. The rhythm continues. Metal scrapes, a light flickers, the timer resets. Reyes adjusts the countdown by fractions of a second, shaving the excess from every move. Marcus critiques the angle of a turn, reminding them that even a shoulder too high could cast a shadow in the wrong direction. Elliot rewinds the generator to mimic the faint hum of the building's real power grid, testing how sound behaves when adrenaline takes over. Nothing is left to chance, because chance doesn't belong in perfection. Outside, rain begins to fall, faint but steady, tapping against the corrugated roof like a metronome. Inside, it becomes part of the rehearsal. They learn to move with it, not against it. Sound can hide sound, Vance once told them, and rain is the best accomplice a thief can have. Hours pass unnoticed. The map on the wall becomes worn, its edges soft from use. Chalk lines fade under footsteps, only to be redrawn again. Each repetition builds certainty, but certainty breeds something else too: blindness. Small errors go unseen, dismissed as fatigue or overconfidence. The stopwatch ticks, but no one notices that it's begun to lag by a single second. A subtle drift, harmless for now, the kind of detail that doesn't matter until it does. When the night ends, the crew stands still, their breath visible in the cold air. They have done it perfectly, at least here, in this controlled silence where walls don't fight back and machines obey their imitation. Vance looks at them one by one, his expression unreadable. We don't chase success. he says quietly. We chase absence of error. For a long moment, no one moves. Then the timer resets. The red light blinks again. The rehearsal starts over. Because in their world, perfection isn't reached. It's repeated until the universe forgets how to resist. And yet, somewhere between repetition and reality, something small has already begun to shift, waiting for the moment when even the perfect rhythm will falter. Night folds itself over Manhattan like a curtain drawn with precision. The rain has stopped, leaving the streets slick and gleaming under the orange pulse of streetlights. The city exhales, unaware that within its rhythm, for ghosts are about to walk unnoticed. A white van rolls slowly down Fifth Avenue, blending into the endless stream of delivery trucks and maintenance crews that feed the sleepless towers. Its markings are ordinary, a fake company name printed in blue, scuffed just enough to look real. Inside, the men wear matching uniforms, clean, pressed, believable. ID badges glint under the faint cabin light, each stamped with the seal of a contractor who doesn't exist. The air is thick with silence and breath. Vance sits in the passenger seat, eyes fixed ahead, calm as if he were heading to an appointment he's kept for years. We move as one, he murmurs. No reply comes. None is needed. Each of them already knows their role. The plan has been burned into their muscles through repetition and exhaustion. The van stops beside a service entrance framed by steel and shadow. Elliot steps out first, clipboard in hand, posture casual. The night guard inside glances at the clock, too tired to care. A brief nod, a buzz of the door, and the ghosts are in. No alarms, no suspicion. Just four silhouettes crossing a threshold designed to reject all others. Inside, the air feels colder. The building hums with artificial life. Ventilation, generators, unseen circuits breathing in the dark. Their boots make no sound on the marble floor. Everything they touch is methodical, almost reverent. Elliot walks toward the breaker panel, unlocking it with a real key copied weeks ago from the original. One turn of the wrist, and the camera feed flickers once, then returns to normal. The system believes it has rebooted. In truth, it's blind. Marcus moves next, slipping into the maintenance corridor. His tools clink softly inside a worn bag as he finds the access vent leading to the thermal grid. He kneels, hand steady, heart measured. 2 wires, 1 twist, 1 breath held. The alarms freeze for exactly 12 minutes. Reyes remains near the elevator shaft, laptop connected through a cable hidden beneath his sleeve. Streams of data cascade across the small screen. He whispers a single word, clear, and the network accepts a counterfeit signal. The jewelry store now reports that its sensors are stable. Every machine, every camera, every digital eye is convinced that nothing unusual exists. At the center of it all, Vance listens through his earpiece. His voice travels like a pulse through static. 2 minutes in, no deviation. His hand rests inside his jacket pocket, touching a small stopwatch. The seconds slip like water through glass. There's a strange beauty in the stillness that follows, a silence so perfect it almost feels sacred. For men move through one of the most protected spaces in the city, and no one knows they're there. They walk past walls lined with glass cases where diamonds sleep in darkness, their brilliance hidden until morning. The hum of air vents becomes a lullaby. Every detail unfolds exactly as rehearsed. The city outside has no idea that one of its fortresses has already been breached, not with force, but with patience, precision, and calm. Yet under that calm, tension coils tight, invisible but alive. One wrong movement could unravel everything. Vance glances toward the far corridor, where shadows stretch long and thin. He breathes once, deep and controlled, then presses the radio again. Proceed. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimes 2:37. The night is theirs, at least for now. They move like ghosts through polished marble, unseen, untouchable, believing in the perfection of their silence. But silence like glass is fragile, and before the night ends, something will break. 2:37 a.m. The second hand ticks once, and the world seems to pause with it. Outside, Fifth Avenue lies deserted, slick with fading rain and amber reflections. Inside, time belongs to them. The cameras are blind, the alarm's deaf, the city is asleep. Vance checks his watch, 7 minutes. That's all. No more, no less. Not one heartbeat longer. Elliot kneels by the vault, tools spread neatly before him like surgical instruments. Every motion is deliberate, every breath measured. The room smells faintly of metal and electricity. He places his gloved hand against the keypad, waits for the warmth of his skin to sync with the sensor, then begins. One press. Pause. Another. Pause. A rhythm they've rehearsed until it replaced their pulse. Behind him, Marcus watches the corridor, counting seconds in silence. Reyes monitors the faint signal from his laptop, ensuring the fake feedback keeps the system convinced that all is normal. And Vance. Vance stands in the center of it all, the conductor of a symphony no one can hear. They don't speak. They don't need to. Words are noise, and noise is danger. The vault clicks once, a soft, mechanical sigh, and then turns. The sound is almost beautiful, like a lock surrendering to respect rather than force. Elliot exhales slowly as the door releases. The air inside is cold and still, a breath frozen in time. Within the steel chamber, black velvet trays shimmer with diamonds, sapphires, and light itself. The glow is surreal, too pure, too deliberate, almost divine. For a moment, even the thieves pause. It's not greed that holds them, but awe. Then motion returns. Gloved hands move like shadows, collecting stones and gold with the precision of surgeons. Each piece is placed into matte black bags designed to absorb light and sound. No clinking metal, no luz y echo. Every item has its place. Every breath has its timing. 3 minutes gone. Outside, a light breeze stirs the wet streets. Somewhere a siren wails distantly, unrelated, but it echoes through their nerves like prophecy. For minutes, Vance signals with a nod. Marcus disables the secondary motion detector by the east wall, using a timed relay disguised as a maintenance fuse. Reyes updates the network timestamp, looping the store's feed so that the system sees what it wants to see: stillness. They move through the vault like ghosts crossing sacred ground. There's beauty in their control, a strange, dangerous beauty that comes from believing in perfection. The air is thick, heavy with discipline and adrenaline, yet calm. 5 minutes. The sound of metal against velvet. The quiet click of a zipper closing. The hum of electricity behind the walls. No alarms. No errors. The line between danger and triumph narrows to a single breath. 6 minutes. Elliot glances toward Vance, who simply raises 2 fingers. 2 minutes left. They're almost free. The plan has worked exactly as imagined. Every variable anticipated, every risk neutralized. The kind of moment where even fate seems to stand still and watch. They move toward the exit corridor. The vault door closes with a whisper, sealing behind them like nothing ever happened. Their footsteps synchronize with the rhythmic buzz of distant neon bleeding through the glass. Vance takes one final look at the store, the diamond cases now empty, the silence absolute. Perfection has a sound, he thinks, and it's this. 6 minutes, 42 seconds. They reach the maintenance door. Elliot keys in the exit override. The lock disengages with a faint metallic breath. Marcus shoulders one of the bags, its weight both victory and consequence. Reyes disconnects his laptop, killing the fake feedback loop. The system will wake in seconds, but by then they'll be gone. 6 minutes, 53 seconds. The rain begins again. 6 minutes, 58. And then, nothing. No alarms. No shouts. No failures. Just silence. They step into the night as if the city itself had opened its hand to let them go. The van waits at the corner, engine purring softly beneath the hum of the storm. Elliot glances up once, expecting to see a flicker of light, a trace of something gone wrong. There's nothing. 7 minutes exactly. They did it. Inside the store, cameras resume their endless gaze, blind to what just passed before them. The system logs a quiet entry, notes nothing unusual, and resets. The diamonds are gone, but the store still believes they are there. Perfection. For a brief, fragile moment, it feels as though they've escaped gravity itself. The van slides into the wet streets, tires whispering against asphalt. None of them speak. Their silence is their victory, their proof that precision can rewrite reality. But perfection is never silent for long. It holds its breath, then exhales. Inside Vance's jacket, his watch ticks. 7 minutes, 12 seconds. He frowns. A delay? He checks again. The time doesn't match the rehearsals. A second lost somewhere between entry and exit. He pushes the thought away. Irrelevant, but the thought lingers. The universe does not tolerate imbalance. A soft vibration breaks the stillness. Barely audible, but unmistakable. A phone. No one moves. For a split second, time fractures. The sound is small, harmless even, but in the language of silence, it's an explosion. Elliot's hand twitches toward his pocket, eyes wide. Vance stares at him, frozen between disbelief and fury. The sound dies as quickly as it came. The screen glows once, a name in warm letters. Wife. The damage is already done. Somewhere, miles away, a network signal pings a cell tower. A packet of data races through circuits. And within seconds, a silent security log marks an anomaly. Unauthorized mobile signal detected in restricted zone. The city doesn't hear it. The crew doesn't feel it. But the system wakes. Vance doesn't know it yet, but the clock they've lived by has just reset itself, counting down not to escape, but to discovery. Still, for now, the illusion holds. They drive through the sleeping city, the rain masking everything, their faces illuminated by fleeting streetlights. Marcus laughs under his breath, unable to stop himself. Elliot forces a smile. Reyes leans back, closing his eyes, whispering, 7 minutes. We did it. Vance says nothing. He only stares at the reflection in the window, the blurred glow of the city bleeding through the glass. He thinks about the sound, about how something so human, so small, could slice through the architecture of perfection. He doesn't speak it aloud, but the thought clings to him like static. Perfection isn't broken by violence. It's broken by emotion. Outside, the van disappears into the distance, leaving only the echo of its tires and the illusion of a flawless crime. The jewelry store remains silent, unaware that it's already betrayed itself. And somewhere in the endless hum of the city, an operator begins tracing the signal that should never have existed. For the audience, for the listener, the story still feels complete. The job is done. The silence feels earned. But the silence is lying. Because even the perfect crime leaves a sound. The faint vibration of a phone that never should have rung. They didn't shout. They didn't run. They didn't hesitate. Perfection had a sound, the silence. If this silence made you hold your breath too, if for a moment you believe they might just make it out, tell me what it stirred in you. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Every story like this lives longer when you share what you felt in the quiet between words. And if you want to keep following how perfection unravels, like this video, subscribe and stay close. Because what happens next will prove that even silence has consequences. The vibration barely lasted a second, but it tore through the air like a crack in glass. Inside the van, no one breathed. The city blurred past in streaks of gold and rain, unaware that perfection had just been undone by something as ordinary as love. Elliot stared at the glowing screen, the name pulsing softly, wife. He silenced it instantly, but the damage had already left the room. Vance didn't shout. He didn't need to. The silence between them was enough to bruise. Somewhere far from that moving van, a tower received the signal. A line of code lit up on a server, small, harmless, but strange enough to wake a protocol that had been asleep for years. At the city's monitoring center, a guard frowned at a console. Why is there a phone active inside Valancourt at 2:40? He muttered, tracing the coordinates. The system blinked red once, confirming. An unauthorized device. Inside a restricted zone. In the van, the rain thickened. Marcus glanced at Vance, unsure whether to speak. Reyes stared at his laptop, his fingers hovering but motionless. Say it, Vance whispered, voice calm but colder than metal. Elliot swallowed. It was her. She was worried. The sentence hung there like smoke, dissolving in guilt. Back at the monitoring center, alarms whispered to life, not loud. Not yet. Just a ping, a quiet request for verification. A camera, feed flickred. The system stitched it together, saw nothing unusual, but protocol didn't care about sight. It cared about data. Within seconds, police dispatch received a silent alert. In a van, headlights painted their faces pale. Vance closed his eyes, listening to the rain, to the heartbeat of something unraveling. You gave it a voice, he said softly. Now it will talk to everyone. And somewhere behind them, unseen and unstoppable, the city began to listen. The first siren began miles away. Faint, almost part of the city's pulse. None of them reacted at first. They'd heard sirens all their lives. New York was built on them. But then came another, closer, echoing against the wet glass of the buildings. Marcus leaned forward, watching the side mirror. That one's ours, he said quietly. Vance didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, the wipers cutting through the storm in steady rhythm. Every drop on the windshield sounded like a countdown. Reyes's laptop blinked red once, an unexpected data spike. The false feedback loop had been pierced. They know, he whispered. Not yet, Vance replied, though even he didn't believe it. He pressed harder on the gas. The van sped through an empty intersection, its reflection stretching across puddles like a ghost trying to outrun its body. Behind them, faint blue lights flickered in the fog. Inside, panic grew quiet. No shouting, no chaos, just breathing, faster now, sharper. Elliot clutched the phone that started all. Its screen black, a lifeless witness. We can still make it, Marcus muttered, checking the route. Underpass on 8th in South. Too late, Vance cut in. His tone was still level, but something had changed in his face, control replaced by recognition. They weren't fighting the law. They were fighting time, and time always wins. The police net tightened fast. Road sensors traced their van's path. Helicopters lifted from nearby rooftops. Every sound of the city turned against them. Reyes closed the laptop, as if silence could undo the signal. We were perfect, he said, almost to himself. Vance's grip tightened on the wheel. Perfection dies the moment it needs forgiveness. Then, for a single heartbeat, everything went still, the storm, the road, even the air. Then came the blinding flash of blue and red ahead, the corner blocked, the inevitable waiting. And the silence, once their weapon, finally broke. The streets erupted in color, red, blue, white, lights slicing through the rain as if the night itself were bleeding. The van swerved hard into an alley, tires screaming against soaked pavement. For 7 minutes, they had been untouchable. Now every second dragged them deeper into chaos. Vance shouted for them to ditch the bags, but Marcus refused. We came this far, he said through clenched teeth. We finish it. Elliot's hand shook. The phone lay on the floor, cracked, the screen flickering like a dying confession. Sirens closed in from every direction, their echoes bouncing off the glass towers like a storm of ghosts. Reyes tried to jam the signal, fingers flying over the keyboard, but the system had already marked them. The silence that once protected them now mocked them. Vance took a sharp turn onto 47th, the van fishtailing. This is it, he said calmly, almost resigned. 7 minutes to glory. 7 more to fall. He slammed the brakes as a blockade appeared ahead. Flashing lights, guns drawn, voices shouting commands they couldn't hear over the rain. For a heartbeat, time froze. The crew sat in the glow of everything they'd built collapsing at once. Then Vance whispered, no sound, no se rende. But the city didn't need their noise to answer. The first spotlight hit them, and the illusion shattered. The doors flew open, hands raised, diamonds scattering across the wet concrete like fallen stars. And just like that, silence turned from perfection to consequence. The van's doors slammed open, and the world rushed in, sirens rained, the metallic click of guns being drawn. For the first time that night, they looked human again. The diamonds, their silent trophies, glittered across the street like scattered sins, reflecting the chaos that surrounded them. Vance stood motionless, hands raised, the calm in his face replaced by something hollow. Around him, time fractured into fragments, boots stomping through puddles, radios crackling, breath and fear colliding in the air. Marcus went down first, face pressed to the cold ground, shouting that it was his fault. Reyes didn't resist. He simply stared at his reflection in the wet asphalt, as if searching for the man who once believed in flawless systems. Elliot stayed frozen, eyes fixed on a shattered phone lying near the gutter, its dim light blinking one last time before dying completely. A single raindrop hit the screen, spreading like a tear. The officers shouted commands, but the crew barely heard them. The only sound that mattered was the echo inside their heads, the vibration the moment it all turned. Vance glanced toward Elliot, and in that look was everything. Fury, pity, and the bitter understanding that perfection doesn't forgive. Hours later, inside the precinct, the interrogation rooms filled with static silence. No one spoke. No one needed to. On a nearby monitor, investigators replayed the surveillance logs, searching for what triggered the alarm. At 2:40 a.m., a single signal appeared, an incoming call labeled wife. That was it, the soundless confession. As dawn broke, the city resumed its rhythm, indifferent to the men who tried to outthink it. The vault was sealed again, the store polished, the glass repaired. But somewhere in the hum of neon and rain, a story lingered. About four men who believed silence could be perfect, until one voice proved that even the quietest sound can end everything. Morning arrived, slow and gray, washing the city clean of its night's sins. Fifth Avenue looked untouched again, as if the rain had erased the evidence of everything that happened. But somewhere, behind locked doors and sealed files, the echoes remained, the faint ring that destroyed perfection, the silence that followed it. Vance sat alone in the holding cell, his eyes fixed on the reflection of light trembling across the wall. No words, no regret, just the weight of understanding. Perfection hadn't failed him. Humanity had. He thought of the vault, of the flawless timing, of the moment the world made sense. And then of that vibration in the dark, a heartbeat, a reminder that even ghosts have lives waiting for them outside the plan. Across the city, Elliot's wife stared at the phone she'd called again and again, unaware of what that simple act had set in motion. Love had broken what greed never could. Marcus confessed everything, his voice flat, almost relieved. Reyes refused to speak at all, and somewhere inside the precinct, the bags of jewels sat sealed, their brilliance dulled under evidence tags, silent witnesses to a story that outsmarted itself. The city kept moving. Cabs honked. People hurried past the storefront, never knowing they were walking over the cracks of a legend. In the end, no one remembered their names, only the whisper of what they almost achieved. A phone vibrates one last time, echoing softly against a metal table. The screen lights up with a familiar name, wife. The call goes unanswered. Sometimes perfection doesn't end with noise. It ends with absence. A crime can be perfect, but a human never is. If this story made you feel the weight of that truth, tell me what stayed with you. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your words keep these stories alive. Remind the world that behind every perfect plan, there's a heartbeat waiting to break it. Subscribe, stay close, because every silence hides another story waiting to be heard.